Body. Hi everybody and welcome to Botany Moon 1. This is 13 Moons Herbcraft with Claire Mackay. So the main reason we study botany is to look closely at plants, learn to identify medicinal plants in the wild. So we're going to look really closely and observe plants carefully so that we can learn to identify and recognize medicinal plants in the wild, but also for safety. So we need to know that we can accurately identify plants so that we can be sure that we're using the right plants. Secondly, by observing plants closely, we start to notice patterns. And these patterns feed back into how we're using plants. And soon you'll discover that you might even have a sense of how plants can heal without really knowing the plant name because of the general tendencies of that family. And this is when it can get exciting. What is botany? Well, like I've just said, botany is the study of patterns in plants. So it's looking at plants, where are the similarities, how the plants of one family behave, and it's recognizing those patterns, and they're going to give you a deeper understanding of how plants work medicinally in the long term as well. Botany is the scientific study of plants. That's very, very broad. Um, there's a huge range of different specialisms, and it can include the physiology, the biology, studying the structure of plants, genetics, ecology, distribution, the classification, and even the economic importance of plants. So, botany also covers the study of bacteria, algae, and fungi. Although, strictly speaking, they actually belong to their own kingdoms and not the plant kingdom. But generally, botany will teach the study of bacteria, algae, and fungi. We're going to concentrate on plants, and we're also going to concentrate mainly on medicinal plants. So, the botany you're going to learn over the course of the next 13 moons is going to concentrate around medicinal plants. And botany also organises plants into a filing system so that we can understand their relationships to each other. So that filing system is called taxonomy, and we're going to take a bit of a further look at that in a moment. So, to understand plants, we need to balance our intuition and knowledge. First, we gather knowledge, and we soon will know enough to trust in our inherent knowing. We're all born with a certain level of intuition, and we respond with our instincts when we're children, and this is an innate built-in survival tool. And we quickly learn to move away from that, and we start to learn logic and reason, and this is important as well. Herbalism is a balance between using your instincts and using your knowledge, and it's important to get that balance correct. You can't just go out into the countryside, pick a plant that you know nothing about, and give it to somebody because you have a sense that it might be good for them, unless you can justify that with your knowledge. So, that might be the case that you see a plant and you don't know its name, but with a little bit of knowledge about the plant family in general, then you begin to bring in some knowledge that can support your senses. You might somewhere down the line realize that you know something about a plant that you're not familiar with. So you might be in another country or another area and come across a plant that you don't know the name of. But because of your background knowledge, you might understand that it's a member of the mint family, for instance. And you might know that because of the particular way it's growing, the leaf patterns, the shape of the flower. Mint families tend to all have are all aromatic, so you might notice the aroma and think this plant contains volatile oils. And generally speaking, all volatile oils have an antiseptic action. Some to a lesser degree than others, but that's something that you could make as a general statement about volatile oils in general. So you might not know this particular plant, but you might recognize that it's in the mint family. You might notice that it has a strong scent and therefore contains a lot of volatile oils, and you might think to yourself, this plant is probably antiseptic. And then go back to a book and find out the name of the plant and say, oh, this plant is antiseptic. Now, I'm not saying that we should all go out and use our instincts to find plants to treat people, but it's certainly a feedback loop. And once you have enough knowledge, your instincts start to feed back also, and it's a two-way learning process, and you can become a really good herbalist by listening to your instincts as well as gathering knowledge. And that's the balance that we want to work towards, to understand, one, how the ancient people learned about herbs, but also to take that a step further, supported with our own knowledge that we gather. And that's a long process, and every herbalist will tell you that it's something that you will continue to learn for your whole life. Okay, so let's look at plant names. So plant taxonomy deals with identification, description, classification, and also the naming of plants. So you can see that we've got this upside down pyramid here, and this is a hierarchy of different classifications. Don't get too caught up in this. It's really not that difficult, and we are only going to concern ourselves mainly as herbalists with the bottom three levels on that pyramid. So we're looking at the species, the genus, and the family. Now, those bottom two give you the botanical name. So the genus is the first of the botanical names, and the species is the second. And all of those plants belong to a family, and those are the three elements that we're really going to concern ourselves with. So don't get too hung up on the whole system. But classification begins with the wider divisions of domains. So we look at whether plants are vascular or non-vascular, whether they have seeds or not, and so on until we get down to kingdoms. So we're really filtering out all the different traits of plants until we start to understand that a group of plants behave in a certain way, and that's when we get to an order or a family. But we're going to be interested mostly in the bottom three levels, so the family, the genus, and the species. Here's a little example of the taxonomy of a common daisy. So we're going to start at the kingdom, and the kingdom is plantae, and that just means it's a plant. And then we're going to look at the phylum, and we've got Anthophyta, and that really only means that it's a flowering plant. And then we're going to look at the class, and the class is Equisetocyda, and that means that it's a spore-producing plant. And then we've got the order, and that's Asterales, and that means that it's a complex plant that has composite flowers. And then we get down to the family, and it's Asteraceae, and that is the daisy family. And again, that gives the distinct features of the daisy family in general. And the genus here is Bellis, and the species is perennis. So this is Bellis perennis, and it's the common daisy. Now, you might wonder why we go to all the trouble of categorising plants in this way, but there are literally hundreds of thousands of plants on the planet, and when we use common names, we can start to get into dodgy territory. If you use the name daisy, we might think in Scotland that everybody knows what a daisy is, but if you go to Europe and you use the word daisy, they might have a different idea of what plant matches that description. And in medicine, this can be dangerous territory. When you're using the common names of plants, you need to be certain that whichever country you go to, you are speaking about the same plant. An example of this is skullcap. Skullcap is used to describe two medicinal plants of completely different families. So there's skullcap laterifolia and there's skullcap bicalensis, and they both have completely different medicinal uses. And so that's really important to not confuse plants, because one might be a poison or one might have a completely different effect. And for this reason, it's important, although it takes a little bit of time and skill and memory, it's important that we remember the botanical names and use the botanical names as much as possible. Alright, so some useful books. You don't need to get these books, and you'll be able to get by using the materials that I put up on the course, but I strongly advise that you get Botany in a Day. This book here, Botany in a Day, is by Thomas J. Elpel, and it covers the plants largely of North America. But quite a lot of these plants will be found in Central, Eastern America, and also in Europe. And really, the content in this book is what's important, and it has a great section on the medicinal properties of plants. And it's a fantastic workbook in itself. And if you're interested in botany, I highly recommend that you get this book. It's fantastic for botany that is specific to herbal medicine. And I know a lot of you are in the States, and this book will be relevant to you. So I can't recommend this book highly enough, and you don't need to get it, but it'll certainly help you to get a better understanding of botany. If you're artistic and you like to learn visually, then I also recommend the Botany colouring book. You can get this online, and it has a lot more detail than you're going to need in this course, but I really enjoyed this book, and it really helps to get a visual understanding of botany. And if you want to go deeper and you're really interested in the science of botany and the biology, then this book here, Botany by James Mouseth, the third edition, is a real classic for university taught botany, and it really goes deep into the plant biology. So if you're really interested in the science and you want to take it that level further, then that's the book I would recommend. Let's look at the uses of plants. Look at the uses of plants. It's really amazing when you start to think about all the ways that plants benefit you on a daily basis, because I think we take it for granted quite a lot. I remember doing this exercise and thinking about how plants are used in our daily life when I was 25 and first started to learn about botany. And it really struck me that I wasn't conscious on a daily basis of how much humans use plants. And I do this exercise with children, and I do it with adults, and it's a really good one. And I don't think it's too simple for anybody. So yeah, so let's have a look at some of these uses and the ways that plants are used in our everyday life. So firstly, oxygen. We all know about the rainforest as being the lungs of the planet, and plants produce oxygen in the form of trees which recycle carbon dioxide and produce oxygen. And also lawns and grass which produce oxygen for humans and cattle. So the plants are our main source of oxygen. Shelter, so through construction, the use of logs and materials created from plant matter, um, we we get shelter because of plants, and we have done right back to the very beginning of time. Plants also provide the main supply of food, and that also includes livestock because we feed livestock with plant matter. So, a huge part of our food supply, um, whether you're a vegetarian or a carnivore, you're relying on plants for food. Fuel, so we get fuel from wood and from fossil fuels, which are derived from plants originally. And medicine, of course, but not only herbal medicine, pharmaceuticals. The majority of pharmaceuticals come from plants or are derived from chemicals that originated in plants. So we're relying on plants for medicine. Clothing, many fibres, the majority of fibres before the plastics were created into microfibres came from plants. And then we've got other products like paper, essential oils, dyes, matches, rubber, turpentine. And of course, not to forget the aesthetic and the spiritual values. So we look at plants as a source of beauty, and you can see this reflected in literature and poetry going way back to the beginning of time. Plants have always been a source of beauty for humans. And then we got the spiritual value as well, a sense of connection. And there's quite a lot of studies being done just now in places like Japan and Scandinavia, where they're looking at how spending time in close vicinity to plants can actually improve your mood and also your health. So it's quite incredible the uses of plants, and I think it's really important for humanity to appreciate all the ways that we need plants. It's not just a case of using plants and benefiting from them, but we need plants to survive as a species, and I think sometimes we take it for granted. And if you look at how humans have treated the planet, I think it's really important to remind ourselves all of the ways that we need plants to survive. Okay, so the first exercise, I know we've gone over the list of how we use plants in general, but I'd like you to get a notebook and mainly for your own benefit. Make notes over a day or perhaps the whole week, depending on when you can fit it in. But take note of all the different ways that you're incorporating plants into your life. And you can ask yourself, what products do you use? How many ways are plants a part of your life? And we're going to go into a bit of discussion in the forum for this moon. Um, so you might be surprised at just how many ways plants benefit you in your daily life, and you might not have been aware of it or conscious of it. And as I said before, I think it's so important for us as humans to understand how much plants benefit us. So this is just a short exercise. Don't take too much time over it, but really just when you have a minute, think in more detail about all of the ways that you're already using plants and benefiting from plants in your life. So we're going to look closely at the anatomy of plants next moon. Um, and I just want to really give you a little introduction here to the parts of plants and another way that they have been viewed in history. So you'll all be familiar with these very, very basic parts of plants: the flower, the seeds, the leaf, the stem, the roots. And these were also in history associated with different elements. So you can look at the roots and how they connect to the soil. And in previous times, they were associated with the element of earth. So they literally connect to the earth and they take nourishment from the earth, and that allows the plant to grow. The stem was connected with the element of water, and this is because the stem actually transports water to the aerial parts. So that is really the duty of the stem. It's a bit like a big straw, and it sucks up all of the nutrients that are taken in by the roots from the earth, including water, and it sucks up and transports all those nutrients to the aerial parts, the periphery parts of the plant. And then when the leaves gather water from the atmosphere, it transports that water back down to the roots, and it's this feedback loop that keeps happening. So the stem was associated with the element of water previously. The leaves were often associated with the element of air. And if you look at the leaves, they're the part that sort of moves in the wind. When the wind passes by, the leaves will move. And they interact with the air. So the leaves were associated with air. The, the flower was associated with fire. I think because a lot of energy goes into creating the flower in a plant. So there's a lot of energy, but also the flower is this is used. Its main purpose is to attract, and there's the reproductive element of the flower as well. So the flower was associated with the element of fire. And then the seeds were associated with ether or spirit. And if you think about it, the seed is dislodged from the plant and it's carried away somehow, either by the wind or by a carrier. And that contains the essence of a new plant, but it's sort of in limbo. It's in between. It's not in the ground, and um, it's not growing above ground. So the seed contains all of the essence for a new plant, but it hasn't been planted yet. So we're going to look at the actual for each family, if you can, in how to use herbs. Don't worry if you can't come across a common medicinal property for each family. This is something that you'll pick up over time. You'll start to see the patterns and the common medicinal property traits shared among families. Um, it will help you understand how to use herbs medicinally, but it's also something that you will learn over time. But I'm just wanting you to go out and start looking at plant families and thinking about the plants that are in those families just now. And if you're an artist and somebody who likes to learn visually, then you can draw these plants. You don't have to do that, but you might like to put a photograph or a picture or a drawing of each plant in your book just to prompt your memory. And you might want to go and look up all of the plants in your field guide, um, just to get an understanding of how they look in the wild. And even better, if you can go outside and find these plants growing, then that is priceless. You can look at books and you can look at information online, but nothing will give you the experience of seeing a plant growing outdoors. And if you're in the UK just now, it might be a bit early to spot a lot of plants, but then there is a challenge for you. So maybe go outside and see how many plants you can find from different families. Okay, if you've got any questions about these exercises, I'm going to put a page for each exercise with explanations in the folder for botany. But don't hold back. If you don't hesitate to get in touch if you've got any questions, and we'll also be sharing information and discussion on the forum for this moon as well. So I hope you have fun. Get in touch if you've got any questions, and look forward to speaking with you in the forum.